Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And I just finished watching Asmongold's video, The War Within is Dead, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. Now, obviously, I think that this title and thumbnail is entirely clickbait. As you know, saying that World of Warcraft is dying or dead and being hyperbolic is just a really good way to get clicks, and people have been saying that for a really long time. One of the first things that I want to say to kind of counter this argument is that right now, with the War Within, we are seeing stuff that we would never normally see in the past. They are sharing information that is literally pre-alpha, interviewing players from all different backgrounds, PvE, PvP, anything, and really garnering and interacting with the community with interviews, being really receptive and responsive to feedback from the hero talents that they have announced. This is completely different than we've seen in other expansions with things like Conduit Energy, and then just hearing silence in Shadowlands with it rolling through, and the same types of complaints and feedback from the community being valid, but at that time being ignored. So I really wouldn't say that the War Within is dead, considering that we're getting that level of kind of transparency that we've honestly never gotten before. I would honestly say that it's pretty impressive. Now, with what direction they move with that feedback, you know, is entirely valid. At one point in the video, there's a lot of discussion that talks about the names of the hero talents specifically, and the main thing that I think that could be taken away as adequate feedback is that when I read one of these names for the hero talents, I really think that there should be an image of my mind, ideally from Warcraft 3 lore. I think Warcraft 3 lore and fantasy is probably some of the strongest in the Warcraft universe. So anyone that I read, something like Oracle, it's not immediately popping into my head some sort of image from Warcraft 3 or honestly even the World of Warcraft universe. But when I see Mountain Thane and I'm thinking of the dwarves thunderclapping and heroic leaping, there's an immediate, reaction and response and imagery in my head. This is a really kind of picky thing because, again, this is literally pre-alpha showcasing these things. I think these are subject to change, but I do think that it is fair that these names, I think, should have some relevance and should immediately trigger imagery from either Warcraft 3 or at least the World of Warcraft universe. There was a lot of time spent on talking about how they want hero skins and class skins, and Blizzard has never really promised that at any point, but they've also, not promised it. I think that it's still entirely possible that hero talents or hero skins end up being a thing. I mean, they're gonna have to make these spells and abilities. We saw them just update the animations for spells from Shadowlands, and a lot of them look really cool with the new upgraded graphics. So, I mean, it is in my hopes or something like a Dark Ranger that we're gonna get shadow arrows and we're gonna get that Sylvanas essence really captured for that specific hero talent tree, and sort of like the physical animations that go along with it. But they haven't said that those aren't going to be a thing, and it was kind of very dismal talking about how, like, oh, that the animations would be sacrificed for gameplay, and I really don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, they've got to decide what the gameplay is going to be before they go tell the art dude, like, okay, this is what we're making, go draw it, and they're gathering the feedback for that, and it's still so early on. So I feel like it's jumping the gun a lot in terms of conclusions for the next expansion being dead. I think the transparency has been really good so far for War Within, considering we're still so early out, and they're interacting with such a wide variety of people as far as interviews go, that I was honestly really impressed with. So I kind of disagreed with that. Valid feedback towards the names of the trees. Disagreed with the fact that, we're probably going to get some at least spell animations, I would think, with a lot of the things that I've read through so far. It would be strange because there's passives that shoot like shadow arrows passively and stuff, and there's going to be dark hounds. Like, they got to animate that stuff. So to say that that's not going to be there, it's kind of jumping the gun a little bit too soon. The next big kind of gripe from this video so far as the War Within is dead, wasn't really necessarily even a criticism towards the next expansion. It was more like a personal criticism towards add-ons in World of Warcraft and the level of influence that add-ons have on the game as far as competitive play. Now, the best analogy that I can give for, what I would consider to be a good game or something good for the War Within is to compare World of Warcraft to a gym, and you can say, oh, that's cringe or whatever, but, you go into World of Warcraft, you're trying to power up your character, you're trying to get stronger, every time you're logging in, you go in the gym, it's the same thing. So if you have a gym that only has 5-pound dumbbells, so it's only for beginners, and they're lifting those 5-pound dumbbells, that's going to be pretty decent for the people that are lifting the 5-pound dumbbells, but you don't really have anywhere to grow or anywhere to advance or challenge yourself. So it's honestly not the best gym, right? You would ideally want a gym that has 5-pound dumbbells leading all the way up until it's impossible to move the dumbbells, really, right? Because you'd want that level of progression available to you. So there was a lot of arguments in this that retail WoW is too complex, which could be the equivalent of, let's say, lifting bicep curling 100-pound dumbbells or something, and that's intimidating. But I don't know if that's necessarily true, because you can start World of Warcraft in Raid Finder, progress into normal, progress into heroic, progress into mythic. Mythic keystones are, start at level 1 and then go up to what, like 30 plus, mid 30s or something like that at the highest level in terms of mythic plus. You don't have to start curling the 100s. You start at the keystone level 1s and you're curling the 5s and you work through and you get better. I mean, for me personally in World of Warcraft, when I started playing, I had no idea what I was doing. I probably wasn't even picking up the dumbbell. I was probably looking like one of those kind of weird janky workouts that you'd probably see on a TikTok or something, wandering around in World of Warcraft, figuring out my place for like years. And that was great. It just had this expansive universe that you can progress through at your own pace. And that's still all available in the game. So as far as like the over complexity, it's going to take you a while to learn it, but the advantages of that means that you've got places to grow and get better at the game and advance and challenge yourself and hopefully make friends along that way in that journey, because a lot of those friends, at least for me, those journeys have been some of the best friends I've ever really had. So I kind of disagree with that in a sense. Now to the add-ons specifically. Now there could be certain add-ons that function like wrist wraps in the gym that, help make your wrists straight, and maybe chalk to help out your grip so that the bar isn't sliding out of your hand too much. And there are some add-ons that are like that, which kind of reorganize the information on your screen, maybe so it's in an area that you can focus on better. And I feel like that level of customization isn't necessarily inherently bad. I think like automation, when you're starting to move into like botting and third-party programs running the game for you, you've probably gone too far, right? Like if there's literally a machine moving the bar for you and you're no longer interacting with the bar at the gym, you've probably crossed the threshold from chalk and wrist wraps and these types of add-ons that you can use to assist or improve your lift, or maybe a belt to be able to tighten up your core or something like that, into a realm that's too far gone. I would debate whether or not weak auras is that problem. But again, this is something that's, a problem for somebody who's playing at a keystone level 30, where this is all going to be mandatory. But when you're starting in Raid Finder, you don't need these add-ons. When you're starting at level 1 keystones, you really don't need these add-ons. When you're starting out at the beginning stage, it's absolutely not necessary whatsoever. And then as you get, more used to the game modes, you might want to start adopting a few of these things to try and help you out on your journey. But there are people who play with no add-ons. I know, at least for PvP, that Peekaboo plays pretty much with no add-ons. He's a competitive level tournament player. Even Asmongold, credits him a lot to being such a fantastic and amazing player. And for the most part, he plays with no add-ons. And he's able to compete against people who are playing, on the other side of the spectrum, like someone like Mez, who's, notoriously been claimed for running like the spaceship UI. And he's running with those full add-ons, and that's helping him out and it's assisting him. Maybe it is too far gone. I think there is some debate with that, like how many of these add-ons are necessary. I feel like weak auras is kind of like where the line is, like pushing it too far. I'd say like Gladius, reorganizing your frames is nice. Tracking diminishing returns seems to be nice. Tracking a couple of cooldowns is nice. But then the weak auras, where they start popping up on the screen, sounding foghorns, audio, like altering audio files, it starts to become a little bit kind of pushing it on that line, which I could agree with as far as add-ons are concerned. But really, is that like the main deterrent for new players to jump in? Because again, I didn't have any of the right add-ons, but as I started, pushing through, getting into more serious raiding through at the end of TBC or Wrath of the Lich King, I started wanting to try and get these to try and hone in my skills, same way that you'd maybe get a belt or wrist wraps at the gym. So some add-ons I think are fine. I do think it starts to push to some extremes, but I think World of Warcraft benefits from the fact that it has a giant variety of content offered to you. You can just be that casual player that's just wandering around collecting mounts and maybe a couple of transmogs, and then you wander your way into a dungeon, and then you level up the difficulty of that, and maybe somebody recommends a battleground and it's casual, and then you advance into maybe some rated content, and your journey can be varied. And I think World of Warcraft actually does a pretty remarkable job of that. I would likely attest, player activity or the amount of people that are playing World of Warcraft more so to this kind of like hype train culture that we've got in gaming, where game comes out, it's super hype, everybody's playing it. Pal World, I think, what was that? I don't know the exact number, somewhere in the millions of players for Pal World. But then now, a few months later, it's only at like 200,000, and everybody's like, Pal World is dead. And then it's like, what are we going to make videos about what Pal World did wrong? A lot of it is just culture. As far as like player activity and investment, and right now the culture is just really just short attention span, jumping into the next thing as soon as possible. And right now Dragonflight's just in that cycle of its expansion where, you know, there's not a lot of new content, there's not a lot of new stuff that's hyping it up to draw in that audience anymore. And I don't even know how much can be really done about that, because that's just a culture and a community thing, the same way in some sense that these add-ons are as well, because you don't necessarily need to have these add-ons. I think that I could go into these keystones after a while with 0 add-ons and be totally fine. I've competitively, you know, played at some high levels with my friends as far as Mythic Rating or keystones and some other expansions, and you know, my teams would be like, you don't have DBM, are you trolling? And I'm like, I don't feel like I need it, and I managed to make through, and it's totally fine. So it's more like a culture thing too, in some sense, to think that you need to be doing that. There was a lot of talk about like how everything is for sweaty players, which I also don't really agree with, because I think you can get most of the item level of like a Mythic Raider, you know, at what, like a level 15 keystone or something like that. In PvP, you get all the same item level of the gear because it's all scaled, so there's no real edge there or advantage there in that regard. So, and they just made it so the Mythic Mount is available on the other difficulties, albeit a random drop chance, but it is available. I feel like there's a lot of focus on trying to make the mid-level players have more rewards to participate in their content. So I don't think it's really all about the sweaty players, and I don't really think that it's all about the casual players. It's honestly finding a pretty fair balance at the moment for World of Warcraft as far as the curve is concerned. So the doom and gloom in regards to this, I don't really understand with directly the next expansion, because it seems to be, to me at the moment, that there is a huge amount of feedback that's being traded around that is all really valid. Now, if you want to talk about the current game and the current patch, maybe we could use some balance tuning. I think, you know, MDI is currently going on. I've seen a lot of like the same compositions, Demon Hunter, tanks, Shadow Priest, Fire Mage, and Mistweaver. It seems like there's like kind of like that God comp that they call it for the Mythic Plus tournaments. So maybe after we see this tournament play through, they can be like, hey, we just saw the Arena tournament, we got the Mythic Plus tournament, and then maybe assess and move for class balance tuning in regards to the current game. But that's not really relevant, again, to the next expansion, which I think that this entire video was kind of like prefaced on. So I just wanted to make my reaction to it, my initial responses to it, because I'm usually pretty fair. Like, my main goal is that I want the game to be good. I've invested a lot of time to it. It's provided me a lot of great experiences throughout my life, and obviously now my livelihood. So the game matters a lot to me. I want the game to be well, so I try to give it fair, honest feedback with the intent of improving it. And I feel like this video is mostly unfair to the next expansion, because a lot of it has been crazy early access and interaction that we never got with other expansions that tended to have quite a bit of community controversy, like Battle for Azeroth or Shadowlands. So I disagree with those some sentiments. Again, like I said in the video, I think the names definitely could be more oriented towards imagery of World of Warcraft or Warcraft 3. And then this line of add-ons is like, I don't know if it'll ever actually be resolved, but it's definitely a fair debate as to like, where's the line? Because like for music, for example, you can use auto tune that just automatically tunes your voice. You can use a lot of these add-ons that like automatically tune to where you need to stand or use things. And there's this blurry line, you know, where maybe that should be decided, like where are we crossing that threshold, and maybe something can be done. But other than that, I don't really know. I just wanted to give my initial thoughts here in response to it, because I actually think I'm actually really excited to try and hopefully the alpha is coming out soon, get into it and start testing some of these things and give some valid feedback, because I think with the culture of hype train hopping, that if we can get some really good feedback through and get some really cool iterations that draw on some really strong fantasies for the classes as far as these hero talents are concerned, that the War Within could actually be really awesome. So other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Smash the subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with everything related to World of Warcraft, and I will see you in the next one.